Hey everyone, welcome back to Watch Your Six. I'm Jason Edwards. And as we mentioned, we're trying something new. We're doing some live posts with social media. So we're on Instagram, YouTube. As always, we recommend going to Spotify, Apple iTunes, YouTube. Hear our shows, our previous episodes. We've had, I think we're up to about 40, and we're going to continue to go strong. And we're getting a lot of really good feedback. So we're excited about the opportunity to help educate you, the client, on some of the what we like to say advanced investment opportunities that are out there, whether you have an investment company or you have a startup that you're trying to do, you're an entrepreneur, or you're just an individual going to work 9 to 5 and you're trying to figure out ways to increase your wealth. That's what this show's about. It's about helping you identify things that maybe you haven't seen in the past and help you identify ways to do things a little bit differently. We also recommend, now that we're doing the live broadcast, feel free to DM us and we'll try to answer some of your questions during the show if we get to it. So welcome to our audiences. Today, we're going to talk a little about the effect of taxes. And it sounds like a boring topic, but what people don't realize is reducing the tax on your dollar is a great way to increase earnings without increasing volatility. Remember, one of the biggest things that stops people from investing or gets them scared is market correction, right? Market corrects, you're worried you're going to lose some of your money. So you have a tendency to become more conservative. Well, if you were to start looking at ways to improve the taxable aspect of your money, you can increase your return by 2, 3, 4%. How do I mean, or what do I mean? Well, if you look at a bank account, let's say a savings account, and that account was making 3%, and you had an investment account, and the investment account is making 8%. Well, because of the tax liability, that banking account would have to make probably close to 11 to 12, maybe 14% to match your investment account, because all that money would be taxed as you earned growth. So that tells us that if I can reduce the taxable amount of my money, meaning when I make money and it comes into my bank and I try to invest it, if I can reduce the taxes on that money, I actually increase the rate of return. It's very simple. So we're going to talk about a number of different ways that you can improve or increase your tax deductibility of your funds or mitigate the tax liability of your funds. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about today is when you start to invest, one of the things you have to worry about is, as I invest and it grows, what's my tax footprint? Well, there are two ways that your money grows if it's non-tax sheltered. There are via capital gains, which is the account grows in value, or there are dividends. So you get distributions each year from an entity. Now, traditionally, older people like the dividend concept because it's almost like getting income. But the problem is every time that money comes out, what happens? You're taxed. So if you have a high dividend play, or if you're in an investment strategy that is increasing your income flow, you are automatically increasing your taxes. That's why, for example, I tell people CDs aren't really that great. Think about a CD. You put money in, it's locked up for a year and a half, you get 4%, the 4% comes out, and what do you think happens to the 4%? You get taxed. So now you've got a dynamic where even that little bit of money you made goes back to Uncle Sam. So when we're investing and we're trying to increase our growth and minimize our tax footprint, we typically will like to look at a capital gain strategy. Now, what is that? Well, that means that as you invest, that money continues to double, triple, reinvest in its strategy. You're not selling any position. So if you're not selling anything, you're not technically gathering any growth. And by doing that, you are pushing the taxable aspect off for years. Now, why is that important? Well, there's two parts. One, if you invest and you pull that money out in a short-term duration, you could get hit with short-term capital gains. That is just fancy jargon for it. You put it in, you didn't hold it long enough, and now when the money comes out, you get taxed at your income bracket. Well, that's going to eat away at your growth, right? If you put the money in and do long-term, which is over 18 months, looking at a year and a half to 2 years, now your tax liability drops to the long-term capital gains. So right there, you probably reduce your taxes by 10, 15% just by holding on to the fund. So that's one really good strategy. The other thing about long-term gains is if you're not going to utilize those and you keep those invested and they keep appreciating value, now what you're doing is you're growing your account, but you're not getting hit with an income tax bill every year. That account is continuing to snowball. That is a phenomenal way to grow your money quickly if you want it to be liquid and accessible, but you want to reduce the tax impact. So hopefully that makes sense to some of our listeners. Hope I didn't get too technical. But at the end of the day, what you're illustrating is really just a checking account with investments. Those investments are put in particular type of investment strategies that don't pay out dividends. What they do is they continue to reinvest and grow themselves based on appreciation. Therefore, there is no gain to you until you sell. So there's no tax liability. So now that asset continues to grow. So that's one strategy. Another strategy, which we find very effective, and many of you may or may not hear about it, it's called an IRA. That is just code for individual retirement account. Very simple. A lot of our listeners, I'm sure, have a regular IRA, have a 401k, or have a Roth IRA. And all of those have different tax footprints. Now, don't get thrown off by the terms, because the terms are just codes, like it's IRS code 401k or IRS code 403b. All that's determining is where the money's coming from and how it's being taxed. Now, the beauty of a regular IRA is the fact that the money going in that account is tax deductible. So that means I put away $6,000 or $7,000 every year. And at the end of the year, when I do my taxes, let's say I made 50,000, 100,000, I'll take $7,000 right off the top, and I don't pay any money on that, on taxes rather, on those funds. So those are great ways to have small, simplified tax deductible accounts. Now, the Roth IRA is a totally different animal. It's the opposite. The money goes in there. It's already been taxed, but now in theory, it grows tax deferred. And when you go to take the money out, it's tax free. So you've got two different components when it comes to the IRA model. One is, do you want the deduction now and pay taxes later? Or two, do you want no deduction now and pay no taxes later? And I'll tell you, it depends specifically on your makeup. If you're in a high tax bracket, if you've got a huge amount of income coming in, if your accounts are fairly large, I'll tell you, they can go either way. That's why I think sitting down with your financial planning team and making sure you have all that information is probably critical to making those choices. But now, here's the really cool thing. If you're self-employed, and any of our listeners today are self-employed and have their own business, there are incredible tax deductible accounts that can have you put up to $70,000 away a year, tax deductible. I'm going to repeat that. There are accounts that can put you well over 70 grand a year you can put away as a tax deduction. So in theory, let's say you make $150,000 this year, half of the funds could be put away and you're only reporting $60,000, $70,000. Now, again, it's critical that you learn the small print and the nuances of how it works, but that is an incredible opportunity out there. And a lot of small business or entrepreneurs or singular run entities that come out new don't take advantage of that. They fixate on running the business, but they don't fix on ways to mitigate tax liability, and more specifically, how to create real wealth. So those tax plans are out there. You've got simple IRAs, you've got solo 401ks, you've got Keogh plans, you've got traditional 401ks, you've got 403bs. I mean, the list goes on and on. But again, don't procrastinate and don't put it off. Do your research, take your time, tune into shows, follow through, and implement these tools, because it makes a huge difference. And why do I say that? Well, let's say you've got an income stream coming in and you were able to deduct 30, 40 grand off that income stream. Well, now when the money comes out and you have to pay taxes, you may have dropped yourself one or two tax brackets. So not only did you save the money, right? It's in a bank account with your name. It didn't go to Uncle Sam, but you've also reduced the amount of taxes you're going to pay on your paycheck. So when you do your TurboTax calculation, or you go ahead and go to your CPA, now you may find your refund is much, much higher. And that's a great feeling, having more cash in your pocket. So it's really critical that you look at these. Now, there are other strategies we'll talk about today. And one of the other strategies is using life insurance or other investment strategies, tax sheltered annuities, that help you reduce taxes in a different level. So in the life insurance world, there's a thing called DOL, definition of life insurance. And what's really interesting is life insurance is a really unique product that you can put money into, and that money can grow, covering the liability. So remember, life insurance first and foremost is covering liability. But if you get the right product, the cost of insurance is fairly relatively reasonable. Therefore, additional portions or parts of the money you're putting into the policy actually go into investments. So they go to S&P indexes or Dow indexes or Russells. Now, why is that cool? Well, there are products that in 10 years or 15 years, you've paid for this. And when you calculate the money you've paid in at the end of 10 or 15 years, you've paid now technically nothing for life insurance because the money grew so quickly that at 10 to 15 years, you actually get back what you put in plus growth. And here's the really cool nuance that if you do it in the right way, even that growth would be non-taxable. So why would that fit into your plan? Well, follow my logic a little bit here. Let's say when I retire, all my money's sitting in a retirement account. Well, when I retire, I don't want to live poor. I want to live nice. So I'm going to probably live at the same income bracket that I lived at when I was working. So what happens in my tax bracket? Nothing. It's the same. I didn't go down in taxes. In fact, I'm probably paying a little more. However, if on the flip side, I had some money in retirement, some money in non-retirement, and then some money in life insurance, I could take a portion out of retirement up to the point where I'm at the lowest bracket. Let's just say it's 15%. But I want to live a little bit better. Well, I could take another chunk out of my life insurance. And again, if I do it the right way, I don't have to report that piece. So I could be reporting and technically on paper, I'm living off 50,000, right? But there might be supplemental income coming in that puts me at 60 or 70. So now I'm living at a lower tax bracket, but my quality of life is not different. You follow me? And I hope I didn't confuse our audiences, but those are some really unique things. Now, people will glaze over and they'll get bored and say, oh my God, but let me ask you something. A trip to Fiji versus a trip to Detroit, is there a difference? The ability to go to a nice steakhouse or go to a burger joint, is there a difference? Yeah, it's called price. So you have to have the ability and the money to be able to make those choices. So what we're telling you is, while this may sound a little mundane or boring, if you follow the logic and do your research, you've got the ability to create a tremendous amount of wealth. I've said this on multiple shows before, and I want our listeners to listen to this. You have for the first time, any person listening has the ability to be a millionaire, period, full stop. I've seen it. I've created it. I know it happens. It's very common now, and it's really surprising. And you may be surprised that even some of your neighbors are millionaires and don't want to tell you that. So if you start to deploy some of these resources, you will start to see substantial financial gains. Instead of trying to pick the most mysterious stock or go into these algorithms where you think you can, beat the odds, start to use some of the basic sound fundamentals that we're giving you, and you will start to see your wealth increase dramatically. And that's why we always encourage our listeners to give us good DMs and questions, because there's a lot of things that go through your mind when you're thinking about it. And remember, wealth is a relative term. What we're talking about is increasing your monetary capability so you can do whatever you think wealthy is. If your thought of wealthy is spend more time with your family, great. If your thought of wealthy is to be able to travel the world, great. If your thought of wealthy is to give money to groups that you feel that, help other people, great. But you have to have the resources to do that. So that's really what we're talking about. And that's why the tax implications is so critical. Now, I want to come back to examples of poor tax planning. And I touched on it briefly using a CD as an example. Remember, we touched on it. Many people listening might go, man, I'm really scared about the market, Jason. So I put my money in a CD. Okay, sounds sound. But let's think about what you did. You put your money in an account, and how long is that money typically tied up for? 6 to 12 months, maybe longer. And at the end of the money, what do you really get? You get maybe 4.5%. What's inflation been running? 2 to 4%. And 3 years ago, it was 10. So in that case, inflation has already eaten up your growth. And then when you get the growth, because remember, you put it into an account that you didn't touch. So more than likely, you didn't need the money. So you put in that account, you didn't touch it. And then what happens? When you pull it out and you get the 4% is given to you whether you need it or not. Now, what do you receive? Well, you receive what they call a 1099. And that is basically a piece of paper that says, yep, you got that little 4%. Now you got to pay taxes on it. So did you really gain anything? Did you grow any money? Did you create any wealth? No, you scared yourself into thinking the market's going to fall, so I want this. And in reality, you hurt yourself. You actually had a negative gain. If you take both inflation and taxes, that 4% account probably was negative 6 or 7% because you reverse it the other way. So that's why it's so really important that you have a financial planning team. Money does not just pop up in your pocket. And those get-rich schemes are typically exactly what they are described: get rich scheme. They don't work. If you do what I'm telling you to do and you follow some of the samples that we give you, you're going to see a dramatic change in your wealth and accumulation. You're going to see in a very short window huge jumps. And if you're in the market and if you're set up properly, you can see some dramatic capital growth. You realize that we had some clients, and again, some clients this last month make 22% on their money in 1 month. 22%. So it's not made up fairy tale stories. These are realities. These are individuals that are really building their wealth, but they're deploying the techniques and strategies that we continue to talk about. They've taken the time to get a financial planning team together. And don't think because, well, I'm not rich, I don't need a financial plan. No. How do you think you become rich? You become rich by putting a team together. Most of the individuals that we work with, the high level executives or individuals that have companies that have grown, started as one person. And now they're a company of 1,100 people or 1,200 people, and they're making, 7, 8 figures. So this is the thing that we want you to try to look at. Make sure you're using some of the sound systemic investment strategies that we have. And we talk about it even in our ebook, because those strategies will help you. And then like in today's show, we talked about the impact of taxes and how your taxable versus non-taxable accounts is a huge discrepancy. So you can increase the rate of return by simply reducing the taxes. You don't have to get more aggressive. You don't have to get more fearful and worry about the sky falling, but you do have to make sure you have the right strategy. So we hope we have a couple of good DMs today. We're going to have our Fast Five in a little bit, and we're going to get into those discussions. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the things that we have going on in the show. But let's go into Jason's Fast Five because there's some really good data points that have come out. So SpaceX. We've got some listeners. I see all the waving hands. How many of you are excited about SpaceX IPO? You should be. SpaceX IPO is scheduled for June 12th. Now, have any of you bought IPOs? There is an opportunity there to buy, but it's a very, very lengthy and very, very arduous process. So if you get involved in that, they've talked about it, and we talked about SpaceX on several posts. But that situation, they're looking at a valuation of $1.75 billion. Now, that makes it the largest IPO in stock market history if it comes out at that level. So would it benefit you to try to get an IPO position share? Absolutely. Now, a couple things to remember about IPO. If you're fortunate enough to get a chance to bid on IPO, bid high. So if you're saying I want 100 shares, you should bid I want 5,000 shares, because remember, you will not get the amount of shares you're asking for because the demand will be so great. And there are only few intermediaries that are available or stock brokerage entities that are available to get access to the IPOs. But if you're able to get in there and offer, remember, put it high. So like I just illustrated, if you want 100 shares, ask for 5,000 shares. Maybe you'll get 100. Who knows? So that's a really exciting time, something to really look forward to. Now, another part of our market that is exploding, and I also hear a ton of times about the bubble, is the tech sector, and specifically the semiconductor sector. But let's look at some of these numbers. Like NVIDIA right now is trading at hit a $5.5 trillion market cap. That is a huge market cap, but there is no sign of slowing up because of the invention and the speed of the invention of some of their hard resources and their semiconductors. And then you notice that Google is second with a $4.8 trillion market cap. So the tech sector is alive and well. But as you see, these are two different parts of the tech sector, right? One is search engine and R&D. One is hardware and semiconductors. So that's another reason I'm not overly concerned about that particular area, because there is so many legs. But that shows you that that particular organization is up 15,000% over the last 5 years. Let me put that number back in your head, 15,000. So that means if you invested in one of these groups, let's say you had put 10 grand 5 years ago, you could have been up 1,500 or 15,000%, right? So you're looking at a huge jump in there. So those are things that you really want to think about. Now, the holidays are coming up, and the president is trying to make some headway. So he is proposing what they call a gas tax holiday. The proposition is to run basically about 18.4 cents per gallon. The problem is when you get through all the rigmarole and all the inflationary pressure and all the legislation, it'll probably feel about 3 to 4 cents less. but that's the promise he's trying to pull together, is some kind of tax holiday for the holiday weekends and holidays coming up to mitigate the gas prices. So that could have a little bit of a ripple in our economy from a positive perspective if the war situation doesn't come to an end. But, look for that, and hopefully it gets through. And again, every little bit of money helps. That also transposes to transport costs. Remember, I talk about that a lot on the show. And that transport cost is the cost to ship goods to you. And those are things that you're going to save on because the grocery stores are going to start charging a little less. We'll see how that folds out. eBay, we talked a little about that before. eBay had a merger acquisition or suggestion, excuse me, where GameStop rejected GameStop's offer. GameStop had offered a $65 billion takeover. Now, here's what's interesting. GameStop offered $125 a share. eBay is nearly 5 times larger than GameStop. So it's like a singular company, small one-man burger shop coming to McDonald's and say, listen, we're going to take you over, and here's a couple of bucks. Obviously, that's not going to happen. So that's a unique situation, and it's sort of a give and take. eBay's reference that neither credible nor attractive. So I don't think you're going to have that merger handle, but you do see some weird things right now in merger acquisitions. And I'll tell you, with the new Fed chair coming in and the possibility that money is going to get cheaper, you may see a ramp up in merger and acquisitions because these entities will access those cheap funds. So remember, we're live now on Instagram and YouTube. We're looking forward to showing you more information during the holidays and other resources. We're going to be showing every Tuesday. We also recommend for you to go to thejasonedwards.com. That's thejasonedwards.com. And we have our ebook that is there. It's a great resource. It's free. There's no strings attached. Take advantage of that. Jump on there or jump on YouTube, jump on Spotify, listen to other episodes, and hopefully you'll get some of the encouragement. But most specifically, you'll get knowledge. And remember, that's what we talk about. Watch Your Six is watching and identifying things that you're not aware of, things that you haven't seen. So once again, thanks for tuning in. Thanks to our audience on Instagram. Good to see you guys. And thank you to our audience on YouTube. And we'll see you next week. I'm Jason Edwards with Watch Your Six. Talk to you soon. Do I do anything on I hit cancel or no?
No, you're good. You just leave that for me.
Okay.
I'm going to figure out the best way that we can go about just moving our workflow here.
All right. Computer's upstairs.
And then I just need there's some MasterCard security code that you need.
I don't even know what that means.
Okay, let me find it.
Yeah. What you're wanting, and I'll give it to you, brother.
Let me find it. How do I go look from here? I don't know.
That's edit settings.
Cancel. Oh, that's live. End stream. End.
Oh, they watched us do that.